Why has your wife's sexual desire declined from the time that you were first dating? Or maybe she never had a high sexual desire. So I'm going to help you guys out here. First of all, most women have a baseline sexual desire, a baseline sexuality that they're in touch with. And when you first get into a relationship, your libido just climbs over the top for both people, especially more for the woman. But it's going to subside when the newness wears off. So if you want to know your woman's baseline sexuality, you got to ask her how often she masturbates. Okay? Or that's really a good clue to let you know where it's going to be. And a lot of men make the mistake of thinking, oh, when she gets to know me, she's going to be more into it or like it more. No. The beginning of the relationship is the hottest sex that you're going to have the majority of the time. And you can maintain it, but I have a few tips for you because most men, the typical experience is we had great sex in the beginning and my wife is just not interested in sex anymore. So I took some notes and I posted this today on my Just for Fans. Number one is how women are raised. Women have a lot of shame and guilt about our sexuality that is repressing our natural sexuality. Imagine a bubbling brook, like a woman's sexuality is enlivened and it's there. Little girls are curious about their bodies and they want to touch their bodies and they're told not to. They're told that men prize our lack of sexual experience. The most prized woman in religion is the virgin. You know, in some religions, in some cultures, women are told to cover up because our bodies can tempt men. You might think of Mormons or Muslims. And there's this cultural programming around the fact that women who don't like sex are prized. So a woman never really learns to get in touch with her sexual desire. It's like a big boulder has been put on top of that little bubbling brook that wants to be a fountain, but there's a boulder put on there. It's put on by the parents, by society, by religion, by culture. And so that desire and that awareness is squashed. The same way that a lot of men can't cry. They were shamed into crying when they were little, and now they can't even do it if they want to. And you don't just develop that skill just because now you're married and in a relationship. This is key. I work with a lot of men, and I always tell them this, was your wife raised religious? What happened? Something happened to make her never develop her desire or what she likes or be in touch with her own libido. Of course, other reasons could be sexual abuse. Women who are sexually abused will either not want sex at all or they will be hypersexualized. Okay. Now, in some religions, women are told, yeah, save yourself for your marriage, and after that, go full steam ahead. But like I said, the way it happens as the brain develops and the neurons connect, and we learn what we like and not like, these neurons have never connected. They're not going to connect just because you set the wedding vows. All that shame and all that repression is there. And a lot of women know that they can't be too sexy in bed because then the man won't respect them. And to make it worse, there are a lot of men that are on the whole body count thing, and I can't be with a woman who's had too many partners, and that just substantiates it and keeps her sexual desire way down there. So she's only going to have good girl sex. And a lot of you guys out there are just having married guy sex because you don't want to be this wild guy. A lot of you men are repressing your dominance. You're suppressing your masculine strength, your assertiveness. Women like to be dominated in bed. Some of them violently and choked. That's kind of an outlier, but we want a guy to lead. And a lot of men have suppressed their sexuality, not because they think it's bad, but because they're told that their leadership and their prowess and their dominance is toxic. So you guys have some work to do as well. And if you get more into your masculine energy and learn to dominate and lead a woman to sex and require sex, and you're an interesting man, you're going to make her more attracted to you, because you guys are not super hot when you're like simping for sex. It's such a turnoff, which brings me to point number 2. Well, that's point number 3, actually. Let me get to point number 2. Men have testosterone. If you give a woman testosterone, she'll fuck anything that walks too. Testosterone is a very powerful hormone that has your libido on. You can just look at a pair of tits, and I keep mine covered in public, and you can get hard and want to fuck that. Like, it's physically driven. For women, sex is more emotionally driven. Sure, we get horny, but we're not. And when they do brain imaging studies of women, they find that women get turned on even watching baboons make out. Okay, we get turned on by a lot of stuff, but we're not going to act on it because we want to feel. There has to be an emotional reason to want you. There has to the desire to be with you comes from an emotional level. Wanting to feel desired, wanting to feel close to you, wanting to go on an adventure with you, wanting to be physical with you. It's an emotional thing, and it's directed at you specifically. We're not going to do it just with any guy. So there are a lot more filters going on, because we don't have testosterone, so we're more choosy. And because we don't have testosterone, they usually say that if you have testosterone, you get horny easily. You think about sex a lot. As men get older, they get more choosy, and they still think about it, but a little bit less. So young men are like so driven by their penis. I feel bad for you guys. It must be horrible. But that makes you have what's called spontaneous desire. You might even just wake up and want to fuck. It's spontaneous. It doesn't require anything other than you have a penis or you see a woman walking down the street. Spontaneous. A woman's sexual desire tends to be, and especially in a longer term relationship, responsive to an emotional stimuli, responsive to the connection with you, responsive to you kissing her neck or telling her she's beautiful or taking her on a date. It's not going to be like, oh, you came naked out of the shower, so she wants to fuck you. No, especially if you had an argument earlier in the day. So that's just facts, guys. And then also over time, women crave novelty more than men do. I bet most men would be happy having sex the same way every time, but women crave novelty. So if you do it the same way every time, we're bored. If you aren't that great in bed, we get bored. Because initially, a lot of the drive that she had to be with you sexually was because you were interesting. You were probably doing things for her too, which is my third point. You might say, she was so horny when we first met. What happened? Well, not only did real life happen and the novelty wore off, but you've changed. Okay? She's not the only one that's changed. You've changed. Guys, you have changed. How have you changed? You stopped taking her on dates. Now you're working all the time. You're back to your normal life, right? You're working all the time. You're doing chores. You're taking care of the kids. But you stopped courting her. You stopped taking her on dates. You stopped caring about how you dress. You're walking around in that old t-shirt. You gained a few pounds. You sit around on the sofa. And you kind of look like a loser. You look like a fat loser. Okay, guys like it when I talk direct. So you're just sitting on the couch doing nothing and you're begging for sex. And it's repulsive. So you have changed. You're no longer the man that's exciting and fun, that is a magnet to her. You're this familiar, comfortable creature that she might love, but love doesn't create desire. Okay? So that's the third thing. Yeah, you were so romantically attentive when you first met. You took her out, you told her she was beautiful, you got dressed up for dates, you did romantic things, you listened to her talk, you looked in her eyes. You were interested in her. You were interested in her, and that's the key thing. We want to feel that you're interested in us and that you think we're beautiful. And maybe you had not yet gained all that weight and wearing all those baggy clothes, and you weren't sitting around farting and burping all the time. So, if you want to keep her desire high, you've got to stoke the fire, and that's going to be a next video that I'm going to do tomorrow. So, the reason your wife is less interested in sex, to sum it up, how we're raised, we don't have testosterone, and you changed. That's it. Now, I would love to hear from the ladies and the men on what you think about why women have lost their sexual desire in relationships and why it goes down after, with time, after 2 years, why it declines, and any tips you have for bringing it back. And thank you for watching my video.